Nathan Carter had survived war zones, endured sleepless nights in combat, and faced enemies that actually posed a threat. But never, in his wildest nightmares, did he think his toughest battle would be over a backyard barbecue. It was a perfect Saturday afternoon. The smell of seasoned steaks filled the air as Nathan flipped burgers on his grill, beer in hand, enjoying the simple pleasure of cooking on his own patio. His black Labrador, Duke, lounged beside him, his tail thumping lazily against the deck. Nathan had moved into the neighborhood 2 years ago after retiring from the military. He'd picked this home for a reason. It was his safe haven, a quiet place where he could finally relax without orders being barked at him. Or so he thought. Because enter Karen. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the HOA president, and she treated the community like it was her personal dictatorship. She had a rule for everything: lawn height, acceptable mailbox colors, even the number of decorative plants allowed on porches. Nathan had mostly ignored her power trips, until now. As he stood at the grill, enjoying the crisp afternoon, a shadow loomed over his fence. Nathan, he sighed before turning. And there she was, Karen, in her usual beige slacks and a sweater that screamed, "I have too much time on my hands." She held her ever-present clipboard, her expression sour, as if the smell of grilled meat offended her very soul. "What can I do for you, Karen?" Nathan asked, flipping a burger. Karen wrinkled her nose. "I'm here about your grill." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "My grill?" "Yes," she said in a tone that suggested she was explaining something to a child. HOA guidelines strictly prohibit unauthorized outdoor cooking devices. Nathan blinked. "You mean my grill?" Karen pursed her lips. "Yes." Nathan stared at her for a long second before bursting into laughter. "You're joking." Her frown deepened. "I assure you I'm not." Nathan turned back to his sizzling steaks. "Karen, it's a standard propane grill. I bought it at the hardware store. Half the houses on this block have one." Karen sniffed. "Well, those homes have submitted the proper requests for approval." "Have you?" Nathan paused mid-flip, gripping the spatula tighter. "Let me get this straight. You're telling me I need permission to use a grill in my own backyard?" She gave him a thin, victorious smile. "Yes." Nathan slowly set his beer down. "And what happens if I don't?" She pulled a bright yellow envelope from her clipboard and handed it to him. HOA violation notice. Violation. Unauthorized outdoor cooking device. Fine, $500. Compliance deadline, 3 days. Nathan read it twice. Then a third time. And then he laughed again, except this time it wasn't friendly. "You can't be serious," he said, shaking his head. $500? For grilling? Karen's smug expression remained. "Rules exist for a reason, Mr. Carter. If you don't comply, further action will be taken." Nathan's smile disappeared. "You listen to me," he said, voice dropping. "I've spent my life following actual rules, ones that meant something. But this," he held up the fine, "this is a joke." Karen's eyes darkened. "You'll regret not taking this seriously." With that, she turned on her heel and walked off. Nathan stood there, watching her leave, his jaw tight. She had picked a fight, and she was going to lose. HOA's first power move. Nathan had dealt with arrogant officers, stubborn bureaucrats, and even enemy combatants. But none of them came close to the level of petty tyranny that Karen wielded. And she wasn't wasting any time escalating her nonsense. The next morning, Nathan stepped outside to grab his mail, only to find another bright yellow envelope taped to his door. HOA violation notice. Violation. Failure to comply with HOA regulations. Fine, $750, second offense. Compliance deadline, immediate. Nathan exhaled through his nose. $750? For grilling? Oh, this was war. Karen's smug power play. Before he could step back inside, he heard the click-clack of Karen's low-heeled shoes approaching. "Good morning, Nathan," she said sweetly, her smug grin widening as she gestured to the notice. "I see you've received your updated fine." Nathan turned, arms crossed. "Updated? You mean this fabricated nonsense?" Karen tilted her head. "You had a chance to comply, but you refused." She gave him a mock-sympathetic look. "I was really hoping we wouldn't have to take further action." Nathan's patience was hanging by a thread. "You're telling me, with a straight face, that my grill is some kind of neighborhood menace?" She shrugged. "It's about standards, Nathan. If we allow one person to ignore the rules, the whole neighborhood will fall apart." Nathan laughed coldly. "Oh yeah, because a steak on a grill is the first step toward total anarchy." Karen's fake smile tightened. "I suggest you pay the fine and remove the grill by tonight." And if I don't? Karen's eyes glittered with something dangerous. Then we'll have no choice but to escalate. With that, she turned and strutted off like she had just delivered a royal decree. Nathan's fists clenched. She thought she could bully him into submission. Big mistake. Nathan pushes back. Instead of taking down his grill, Nathan spent the next few hours doing his homework. First, he pulled up the HOA's bylaws. He skimmed through the hundreds of pages of nonsense before landing on the outdoor cooking section. And there it was, clear as day. Portable outdoor cooking devices, including propane grills, are permitted in private backyards so long as they adhere to fire safety regulations. Nathan smirked. Karen had lied. She wasn't enforcing a real rule, she was making one up. And now, he had proof. Karen tries to bring in reinforcements. That afternoon, as Nathan was finishing up some yard work, a city inspector pulled into his driveway. Nathan straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans as the man stepped out. "You Nathan Carter?" the inspector asked, checking a clipboard. "That's me," Nathan said. "Let me guess, Karen sent you?" The man sighed. "Yeah. She filed a complaint about an illegal outdoor cooking device." Nathan grinned. "You mean my perfectly legal HOA-approved grill?" The inspector raised an eyebrow. "You got documentation on that?" Nathan pulled out his phone, already prepared. "Right here." He tapped the HOA's own rules, highlighting the section that explicitly permitted grills. The inspector read it twice, then let out a tired chuckle. "Yeah, this is nonsense," he muttered, shaking his head. "She's wasting our time." Nathan crossed his arms. "So, what happens now?" "Well," the inspector said, loud enough for Karen, who was watching from a distance, to hear, "this is a frivolous complaint. If she keeps pulling stunts like this, she could be fined for abusing city resources." Karen's face twisted in fury. Nathan gave her a two-fingered salute as the inspector packed up and left. This battle wasn't just about a grill anymore. It was about principle. And if Karen wanted to go to war, Nathan was more than ready. The HOA escalates the conflict. Nathan had won the first round, but he knew Karen wasn't going to stop. She had lost in front of an official inspector, and someone like her couldn't handle public humiliation. The next morning, the retaliation began. The flood of false violations. Nathan stepped outside to grab his newspaper and found not one, not two, but 3 yellow envelopes taped to his door. Violation notices. Unauthorized outdoor cooking device, $750 fine, final warning. Unapproved yard decor, $500 fine for his American flag of all things. Obstructing community aesthetic, $650 fine for leaving his truck in his own driveway. Nathan laughed bitterly. She wasn't even trying to be subtle. Before he could rip them up, Karen appeared like clockwork, strolling down the sidewalk with her usual smugness. "Good morning, Nathan," she chirped. "I see you've received your new violations." Nathan crossed his arms. "You mean the fabricated nonsense?" Karen gasped. "Oh, Nathan, these are legitimate HOA infractions." She gestured to the papers. "Perhaps if you took the rules more seriously, we wouldn't have to keep doing this." Nathan stepped closer, his voice low and steady. "Karen, we both know these are fake. My truck's been parked in the same spot for 2 years. My flag was here before I even moved in. And the grill?" He grinned. "We already proved that one's legal." Karen's smugness faltered for just a second before she recovered. "Well, you're free to appeal the fines at the next HOA meeting." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I will." But Karen wasn't done yet. The HOA board starts questioning Karen. That evening, Nathan did some digging. If Karen was pulling this stunt on him, she had to be doing it to others. And he was right. A few doors down, an older neighbor, Frank, was outside watering his plants when Nathan walked up. "Frank," Nathan said, leaning against the fence. "You ever get fined for nonsense?" Frank sighed, shaking his head. "Lately? Yeah. Karen hit me with a $300 fine for improperly trimmed hedges." He glanced at his perfectly shaped bushes. "Tell me what looks improper about those." Nathan nodded, just as he suspected. "She's targeting people," Nathan said. "People who stand up to her." Frank frowned, glancing down the street toward Karen's house. "Wouldn't surprise me. She's been running the HOA like a mafia boss." That's when a voice chimed in from behind. "Yeah, I've been thinking the same thing." Nathan and Frank turned to see Lisa, one of the HOA board members, standing there, arms crossed. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Look, I'm not supposed to say this, but Karen's been making decisions without board approval." Nathan's brows lifted. You're serious? Lisa nodded. She's been issuing fines left and right, and when we ask for documentation, she brushes it off. She sighed. Some of us are starting to think she's pocketing money. Nathan felt a spark of victory. He had suspected as much, but now? Now he had someone from the inside confirming it. The beginning of the end. Nathan smirked. Lisa, do you have access to HOA financial records? She hesitated. Not officially. But I might know where she keeps them. Nathan's grin widened. Karen thought she was untouchable. But her own people were starting to turn against her. And her downfall had just begun. The HOA oversteps and the protagonist strikes back. Karen had been playing her petty power games for too long. But now, she was about to go too far. Nathan was ready for her, but even he didn't expect what happened next. Karen makes her boldest move yet. Nathan woke up to the sound of metal clanking outside his house. Frowning, he threw on a jacket and stepped onto his porch, only to see a tow truck backing into his driveway. 2 workers were already hooking up his truck to the lift. Nathan's stomach dropped before his anger flared. Hey, he barked, storming forward. What the hell do you think you're doing? One of the workers looked up, uncomfortable. HOA ordered a tow. Said this vehicle's in violation. Nathan felt a vein in his forehead twitch. A violation of what? My truck is parked in my own damn driveway. The worker hesitated. You'd have to take that up with the HOA, sir. Nathan turned his gaze toward Karen, who was standing at the edge of the street, smirking like she had just won the lottery. This is what happens when you don't follow the rules, Nathan, she said smoothly. Nathan's fists clenched. She really thought she could just take his damn truck? Bad move. Nathan calls in backup. Instead of blowing up, Nathan pulled out his phone and dialed the police. Yeah, I'd like to report an attempted illegal vehicle seizure, he said, his voice calm but dangerous. Karen's smirk vanished. You can't be serious, she hissed. Nathan just grinned. Oh, I'm very serious. Within minutes, a squad car pulled up. An officer stepped out, taking in the scene before walking up to Nathan. Sir, what's going on? Nathan handed over the HOA's own rules. My truck isn't in violation of any ordinance, he explained. This tow was ordered without legal justification. The officer flipped through the paperwork, then turned to Karen. Ma'am, do you have documentation proving this vehicle is a violation? Karen stammered. WLI. The officer's eyes narrowed. Because if not, this is considered an unauthorized towing attempt. That's a serious issue. Karen's face drained of color. The tow truck driver cleared his throat. We're just gonna go. They quickly unhooked the truck and left. Nathan smirked, arms crossed. Nice try, Karen. But he wasn't done yet. The public takedown. That night, Nathan gathered his neighbors. Frank, Lisa, and everyone else who had been screwed over by Karen's HOA reign. It was time to expose the truth. With Lisa's help, Nathan had gotten copies of the HOA's financial records. What he found? Thousands of dollars in missing funds. Fines disappearing from records after being paid in cash. Suspicious transfers to Karen's personal account. She wasn't just abusing power. She was stealing. At the next HOA meeting, Nathan walked in with a stack of papers and a bombshell revelation. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, holding up the documents, Karen hasn't just been bullying homeowners. She's been embezzling your money. The room erupted. Gasps. Shouts. Pure outrage. Karen's face turned ghost white. You have no proof, she shrieked. Nathan grinned and tapped his phone. Actually, I do. I had a forensic accountant look at your transactions. Karen sputtered. You had no right. I had every right, Nathan cut in. Because you've been illegally fining this entire neighborhood to line your own pockets. The crowd turned on her. Neighbors started shouting, demanding answers. One board member stood up. I move to remove Karen as HOA president immediately. Seconded, someone else shouted. It was over. Karen had lost. And the best part? She had done it to herself. Karen's final, desperate move. Karen was cornered and she knew it. Her HOA dictatorship had crumbled, her illegal activities were exposed, and the entire community had turned against her. But like a cornered rat, she wasn't going down without a fight. Karen tries to save herself. 2 days after the HOA meeting disaster, Nathan received an official-looking letter in the mail. Subject: HOA lawsuit, cease and desist notice. Nathan rolled his eyes before he even opened it. Inside was a poorly written legal threat, claiming that Nathan had engaged in defamation against the HOA and that he needed to immediately retract his false accusations or face legal consequences. At the bottom, Karen's signature. Nathan laughed out loud. This wasn't a real lawsuit. It was a bluff. A desperate attempt to intimidate him into backing down. Too bad for Karen, he wasn't scared. The legal backfire. Instead of ignoring the letter, Nathan decided to flip the script. He took the fake legal document straight to his lawyer. Within a few hours, Nathan had a real cease and desist letter. But this time, it was aimed at Karen. Later that evening, Nathan walked up to Karen's front door and rang the doorbell. Karen opened the door, her face smug, until she saw the legal envelope in his hand. "What is this?" she snapped. Nathan smirked. "A real legal notice. See, Karen, what you did. That's called legal intimidation. And that's very illegal." Karen's face flushed red. Nathan continued. "If you send one more fake lawsuit threat, I will file an actual lawsuit against you for fraud and harassment." Karen's eyes widened. You wouldn't dare." Nathan leaned in slightly. "Try me." For the first time, Karen had no response. She just slammed the door. Nathan chuckled to himself. But Karen still had one last dirty trick up her sleeve. Karen caught red-handed. Later that night, Nathan's security camera alert pinged his phone. Curious, he pulled up the footage. And there she was. Karen, sneaking onto his property. In the grainy night vision, she tiptoed to his grill, pulled out a screwdriver, and started loosening the gas line. Nathan's blood ran cold. She was trying to sabotage his grill. To make it dangerous. She wasn't just being petty anymore. She was being criminal. Nathan immediately called the cops. "Yeah," he said, his voice dead calm. "I have video evidence of trespassing and attempted property damage. You're going to want to get here fast." Karen's arrest. When the police arrived, Nathan played the footage for them. The officers watched in stunned silence as Karen's face appeared on the screen, her hands working to sabotage the grill. One officer turned to Nathan. "Sir, do you want to press charges?" Nathan didn't hesitate. "Oh, absolutely." Minutes later, Karen was dragged out of her house in handcuffs, her screams echoing through the neighborhood. "You can't do this to me. I run this community. This is my HOA." Nathan just stood on his porch, arms crossed, watching. "Not anymore, Karen." As the police car rolled away, the neighbors gathered outside, watching the spectacle unfold. And for the first time in years, the neighborhood felt peaceful. Karen had lost everything, and she had no one to blame but herself. HOA crumbles and Karen's downfall. Karen's arrest sent shockwaves through the neighborhood. For years, she had been the HOA dictator, controlling people's lives with petty fines, ridiculous rules, and outright corruption. But now she was the one sitting in the back of a police car. And the HOA? It was falling apart. The board turns against Karen. After Karen's arrest, the remaining HOA board members panicked. They had allowed her to run things like a tyrant, and now they realized they were next in line for consequences. At an emergency board meeting, one of the senior members, a nervous-looking man named Richard, stood up. We're formally resigning from our positions," he announced. The neighbors cheered. Lisa, the only decent board member, stood up. "And with that, I move to dissolve the HOA entirely." "Seconded," someone yelled from the back. Within minutes, it was official. The HOA was dead. For the first time in years, homeowners were free from Karen's reign of terror. No more fines. No more petty rules. No more HOA dictatorship. Karen's life falls apart. With the HOA gone, Karen had nothing left. But her problems were just beginning. She was facing trespassing and property damage charges. She was personally liable for the missing HOA funds. And worst of all, the neighborhood had turned against her. Karen's once pristine home, the one she used to judge others from, was now an embarrassment. Her windows stayed shut. Her mail piled up. Her lawn overgrew. The same thing she used to fine other people for. And then, one morning, a moving truck pulled into her driveway. Nathan, sitting on his porch, sipped his coffee as he watched. Karen stormed out of her house, looking miserable. Her hair was a mess, her clothes wrinkled. She spotted Nathan watching from his porch and glared. Nathan raised his coffee mug in salute. "Safe travels, Karen." She looked like she wanted to scream. But instead, she climbed into her car and sped away. As the moving truck pulled out, the neighborhood cheered. Karen was gone, and peace was finally restored. Nathan's victory. That evening, Nathan grilled a huge steak in his backyard. No more fines. No more HOA threats. Just him, his grill, and his freedom. As he sat down to eat, his neighbor Frank walked over, holding something in his hand. It was a fake HOA violation notice. Violation: excessive enjoyment of a grilled steak. Fine, 1 beer. Nathan burst out laughing. Guess I'll have to pay up, he said, tossing Frank a cold beer. And as he sat back, taking in the peaceful, HOA-free neighborhood, he knew this battle was worth it. The HOA faces full legal consequences. Karen's downfall wasn't just a personal humiliation. It was about to become a legal disaster. Nathan had made sure of that. The HOA's financial crimes are exposed. After Karen was removed from power, investigators dug deep into the HOA's finances. What they found? Over $100,000 in missing funds. Suspicious transactions to Karen's personal bank account. Unaccounted HOA fees that had mysteriously disappeared. The local news got hold of the story, and suddenly Karen wasn't just the neighborhood villain. She was a public disgrace. The HOA is hit with massive fines. After reviewing all the financial violations, the city slammed the HOA with a $300,000 fine for illegal enforcement and fraudulent activities. But there was a problem. The HOA didn't exist anymore. So guess who was personally liable for the missing money? Karen. With no HOA funds to back her up, she was on the hook for every stolen cent. The homeowners fight back. Nathan wasn't done yet. He gathered the neighbors who had been unfairly fined and connected them with a lawyer willing to file a class action lawsuit. The case exploded. Dozens of homeowners stepped forward, detailing their experiences: unlawful fines, threats, false liens, and financial losses. And with Karen's embezzlement already proven, the lawsuit was an easy win. Karen's last stand. During the final court hearing, Karen sat in the defendant's seat, looking miserable. When the judge ruled in favor of the homeowners, awarding full refunds and additional damages, Karen visibly sagged in her chair. Nathan, standing outside the courthouse, watched as she stumbled out. She looked at him, eyes burning with humiliation. Nathan simply smiled. Karen had picked the wrong fight, and she had lost everything. Justice had been served. Karen's personal downfall. With the HOA dissolved, the class action lawsuit won, and the neighborhood free, Karen had officially lost everything. But her misery wasn't over yet. Karen's life after the lawsuits. She had been forced to sell her house to cover her legal debts, and now? She was completely broke. One day, as Nathan was grilling a fresh batch of burgers, he overheard a conversation between two neighbors. "Did you hear about Karen?" Frank muttered, barely holding back laughter. "What now?" Nathan asked, flipping a steak. "She got a new job," Frank smirked. "At another HOA." Nathan nearly choked on his beer. "You're kidding." "Nope. She's not president this time, though." Frank grinned. "She's just a low-level admin." Nathan shook his head, laughing. From dictator to desk worker. It was poetic justice. Final humiliation. A week later, Nathan was scrolling through local news when a headline caught his eye. Former HOA president fired after attempting to enforce non-existent rules. Nathan burst out laughing. Karen had tried to pull the same power trip at her new job. Except this time, her boss fired her on the spot. She wasn't just out of power. She was completely irrelevant. And that was the perfect punishment. Segment 8 complete. Word count, 700. Remaining segments, 1. Let me know if you're ready for the final segment. You said. Yes. ChatGPT said. Segment 9. Epilogue and final mic drop. The neighborhood had finally changed. Without the HOA's ridiculous rules, people could actually enjoy their homes again. No more petty fines. No more clipboard patrols. No more Karen. Nathan sat on his porch, a plate of perfectly grilled steaks in front of him, enjoying the peace and quiet. Then, from the sidewalk, Frank walked up, holding a piece of paper with a smirk. Nathan took it and read. Violation: excessive enjoyment of grilled meat. Fine, 1 beer. Nathan burst out laughing. He tossed Frank a cold one. Guess I'll have to pay up. Frank chuckled. You think she'll ever come back? Nathan leaned back in his chair, watching the peaceful, HOA-free neighborhood. Not a chance. Karen was gone, and she was never coming back. Nathan grinned. Some fights weren't worth it, but this one absolutely was.